You know that moment halfway through your novel, maybe around chapter 5, when you realize your story's pacing is basically stuck in molasses? Your hero's just wandering around aimlessly, and you can practically hear your readers closing your book and moving on. It happens to the best of us, but guess what? You can fix it. So let me give you 5 ways to crank up your story's tension. Think of this as your personal cheat sheet to jolt your narrative awake. I will tackle those dull, lifeless scenes and show you how to transform them into pulse-pounding page turners. We'll even give you some before and after snippets so you can see how to level up your writing immediately. By the end of this video, you'll have a game plan for turning your snooze-worthy scenes into edge-of-your-seat chapters. First up, let's talk about passive writing. This is the silent killer of all tension in your book. Think of it like building a gourmet kitchen with top-of-the-line appliances, but you never actually cook a single meal. Sure, it looks impressive, but it's not actually doing anything useful. Passive writing usually shows up in 2 ways. You have the passive voice, and then you have passive storytelling. A classic example of passive voice is "the ball was thrown by John" versus "John threw the ball." And if you have too much passive voice, well then your writing will start to feel about as exciting as reading assembly instructions for IKEA furniture. So let me give you another example. The door was quietly opened and the footsteps were heard coming closer. To make this more active and more exciting, he eased the door open, each footstep echoing like a countdown in her ears. The first one is passive and boring. The second is alive and creepy. Now, passive storytelling is where your characters are basically lumps on a log. They're just reacting to stuff instead of doing anything. Or you bury the plot in endless exposition and drain all of the urgency from it. A tip you can use is to skim your draft for any mindless to-be verbs. Is, was, were, be, been, and instead replace them with more energetic choices. And ask, is my hero chasing something meaningful, or is he just being dragged around by the plot? Because if your characters are on autopilot, then your readers will be too. If you would like a professional editor to take all of this hard work on for you, refine your manuscript and make your story jump off the page, or maybe just give you some detailed feedback, well then drop us a line. There is a link in the description box below. Next, let's talk about stakes. This is your story's fuel. If your characters have nothing to lose, your readers have no reason to care. It's like spending weeks staging a lavish grand opening for your new restaurant, complete with fancy menus and top-tier deco, but then you never let a single customer inside. So the first thing you need to do is you need to define the risk. Ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen if my hero fails? Could he lose a job, lose a loved one? Could he even lose their life? Right? Crank it up. The bigger the risk, the more your reader is going to lean in and want to learn more. And then you need to escalate the consequences. So don't just raise the stakes once. You need to keep tightening the screws. Here's another before and after example. Here's the before. If she failed to submit the form, she'd have to wait another week. Pretty boring stakes. So what if instead, if she missed the midnight deadline, the scholarship was gone, her only chance to stay in school? Much better. You can see there is so much more urgency with the second example. So the actionable tip here is to write down your protagonist's main goal. Then ask yourself, what's the biggest, baddest fallout if they blow it? And really stir in that fear. If it scares you, then it's going to intrigue your reader. Sometimes when you're writing, you'll think that you have tension, but the pacing will still be limping along. This is where you need to use time pressure, adding a ticking clock that forces your characters to scramble. You could introduce a deadline. You could use a literal clock like 24 hours to save a hostage or their toast. You could use a figurative clock, the last train leaving at midnight. Miss it and you're stuck forever. You want to layer additional pressure. So 2 hours before the big hand hits 0, your hero suddenly discovers a key piece of information, or whoops, they get betrayed by someone that they trust. Now, I'll give you a before and after example of this as well. So the before would be he walked around the city all day searching for clues. If he found them, cool. If not, whatever. Again, very boring. A better version of this is he glanced at his watch, just 2 hours left. One wrong lead and the ransom drop would happen. He'd lose his sister forever. You can see much higher stakes and a lot more gripping. So the tip here is the moment you spot a dragging scene, introduce a deadline, even if it's a small one, such as the boss wants an answer by tomorrow morning. That can turbocharge your protagonist's motivation. Now, let's talk about language. You can have nuclear level stakes and an impossible deadline, but if your prose is as limp as a soggy chip, then none of that matters. You need strong verbs and vivid details, or it's all wasted. So you need to choose active, powerful verbs. Instead of walked, go for something like stalked, marched, or stormed. Each choice will paint a distinct mood. It's also important to leverage sensory details. So don't just say she was scared. Show us how the darkness presses in, or how her heart's about to punch a hole in her chest. For this, I'll use another before and after example. So the before, she felt scared as she walked down the dark hallway. Again, not so great. Better version would be her heart slammed against her ribs with each step. The rotting wood stench clawing at her nostrils. A lot more engaging. And you also want to avoid overloading with adjectives. More words doesn't always equal better. Precise verbs and strong details will pack a bigger punch than a dictionary worth of lukewarm descriptions. The tip here is to pick your dullest scene, swap out those blank verbs for dynamic ones, and sprinkle in some sensory hits, and watch your tension skyrocket. Your reader's pulse will match your characters. Finally, tension isn't just about the seconds counting down on a ticking bomb. It's also about internal chaos. If your protagonist has to make a challenging moral choice or wrestle with guilt, that can maybe be just as tense as an actual explosion. So think about internal conflict. Maybe they have to lie to someone that they love or break a promise that really defines them. If you create moral anguish, that is pure gold. You can also use character relationships. Tension can come from betrayal, unrequited love, or from clashing personalities. For this, let's use another before and after example. The before is Alice argued with her best friend, but they made up eventually. Again, it's okay, but a better version would be Alice's throat tightened. One more lie, and she'd lose her best friend forever. But telling the truth meant the real culprit would walk. Each second of silence felt like an eternity. This is so much better, so much more gripping. So the tip here is to layer emotional stakes on top of external conflict. Guilt, shame, love, hatred, they will all amplify the tension. So make your characters suffer just a bit, and your readers will be glued to the page. Let me know which of these tips you will be using to amplify the tension and raise the stakes in your writing. YouTube will now be recommending another one of my valuable writing videos just here, so go ahead and make sure to watch that one next.